Pledge of Allegiance at 7 o'clock.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk Cody, would you do a roll call of the board, please?
Supervisor Milky,
Here.
Treasurer Rice,
Here.
Trustee Brown,
Here.
Trustee Hauk,
Here.
Trustee Thering,
Here.
Trustee Bills is excused, and Clerk Cody here.
Item 4 on our agenda, approval of agenda. I'd be happy to entertain any motions regarding the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Support. Motion by Rice, support by Brown. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion to approve the agenda as presented passes unanimously. That brings us to item 5, presentation. We don't always have presentations, but I always like when we do. I guess with that, Manager Stiljar, do you want to do any introduction here?
Yeah, just to introduce Miss Allie Barnes. She is the principal in charge of our audit this year and worked closely with Sherry Teeler, and I want to acknowledge and thank both of them for the work they did. And Ms. Barnes is going to walk us through the audit, the results of the audit. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you for that.
And you have the floor.
All right. Excellent. Well, I will echo Mark's thanks to Sherry right off the bat. Preparing for and then dealing with auditors is a tremendous amount of work, and so we really appreciate all the time that she spends getting ready for us and then answering our questions while we're here and while we're wrapping up. So big thanks to her to make sure this can get done for all of you. So we're going to kind of go through a summary of the results. It says it's on. I don't know if this, oh,
I think Mark was in your way.
got it. Okay, I'll try it now. It looks like it's going. All right. So we issue an audit opinion annually, and the audit opinion you want is an unmodified opinion, which is what the township received. This is the highest level of assurance that we can give you regarding your financial statements. And essentially, we're saying that we believe the numbers in your financial statements have been presented fairly when we take into consideration materiality. So that's the good news. And really, there is no bad news tonight, so, no spoiler alerts or anything. So we'll take a look here at general fund. You can kind of see the breakdown of your revenue for 2021. Total revenue came in at about 2.8 million. You'll see the largest percentage comes in the state shared revenue category, making up about 50% of the dollars you receive, or about 1.4 million. So pretty significant there. And then your next two categories are going to be local contributions and property taxes. Local contributions is up this year. Last year it only accounted for about 8% of your total general fund revenues. This year it's about 18%, so a little change there. The reason for that is that the East DDA made a contribution to the general fund to cover some of the projects that general fund incurred the expenditure for the year. So that's why you're going to see a change in category year over year there. Other than that, though, your other categories as a percentage remained relatively the same, with the exception of state shared revenue, which was also up this year as well. So those were kind of the two main change areas for you. You can see revenue in 2017 and 18 remained relatively flat and then have been trending upwards since then. So between 2020 and 2021, there was about a $400,000 increase, which you can see there. Again, about 200,000 from the East DDA contribution, about 200,000 related to revenue sharing dollars as well. What you will not see in general fund, and I like to point this out now that we have all of this extra federal money out there, is you will not see your ARPA dollars in your general fund. When those dollars came out, the Michigan Department of Treasury gave local units the option to account for those in a separate special revenue fund. They didn't have to do that, but most local units did choose to account for those dollars just for now. They may at some point get moved to a different fund, but they are in a completely separate fund as of now. So you have about $717,000 at the end of the year that was sitting in cash and then in unearned revenue, since you hadn't spent any of that money and incurred any expenditures to be able to recognize that. So I did want to point that out in case someone was like, where'd the ARPA dollars go? They're not in general fund. All right, we'll take a look at the general fund expenditures then, which came in at about 2.2 million for 2021. Here you'll see your general government category makes up the most significant portion, about 38% of your expenditures. And then public works is going to be the next most significant category. So between general government and public works, what you would see is that as a percentage of the whole, general government decreased. It was about 46% in the prior year, and public works increased this year. So it was about 18% in the previous year. So in 2021, in that public works category, two things happened. One, there were road projects. So there was about 386,000 in road projects for the year, versus in the previous year, there were sidewalk and non-motorized path projects. And so there was only about $210,000 spent on the 2020 projects. So we had a net increase there of about $160,000. So that's why if you were going to compare year over year, you would see those particular changes. And then that green category there, the other category, includes items for capital outlay. And so that particular category was about 6% in the previous year, so about doubled up to 12% this year. And that is where we would see the expenditures for any capital outlay projects, most notably for this fund, the Jamison Hall project. And then here we can see those expenditures over the past 5 years. So you'll see that in 2020, there was about 1.9 million. Expenditures did increase. They're about 2.2 million for 2021. And again, back from the last slide, the two main contributing factors are that road projects were more than sidewalk projects in 2021 versus 2020, and then that Jamison Hall project. That's going to account for most of that increase year over year. Okay, so with that, then we had this year revenues did exceed expenditures in the general fund. So you will see that your general fund's fund balance increased by about $581,000. So you have about 5.8 million in fund balance at the end of December. That is broken up into a few categories. What's in blue is going to be your unassigned portion, which was about 4.6 million. And then that portion in orange is assigned. So there's two items that make that up. There were amounts assigned for future road projects, and then future budgeted expenditures based on your 2022 budget. And then just a small portion there in non-spendable, which is really more of an accounting concept, why that's there. So overall, very healthy fund balance in the general fund. Here you can see if you took your fund balance as a percentage of your expenditures, you have over 250% of fund balance in expenditures. That had kind of been building its way up in 2019, and now you've been spending. Your spending levels have changed, so that percentage has come down slightly, but still a very healthy fund balance for the general fund. All right, we'll just touch on the fire fund, which is also a major fund here, just to give you some highlights. That fund at the end of December had over $1 million in cash. Then the next most significant receivable really is related to the property taxes, which would have been levied in December of 2021, but not yet collected from residents at the end of December. There is this concept of a deferred inflow. That's really all of the property tax revenue related to those taxes levied in December of 2021. So that money kind of moves from that category to revenue once you're in 2022. Again, kind of an accounting concept. And that leaves us with about $960,000 in fund balance. On the next slide, then, we can see our revenues and expenditures in this fund. So here you'll see about $713,000 comes in the form of property taxes. There is some charges for services and other revenues. So total revenue comes in at about $882,000. On the expenditure side, you have about $746,000 going out. So this fund added back to fund balance to give you that $960,000. So you'll see that you have more than a year's worth of expenditures sitting in fire funds fund balance as well. Not that unusual. Sometimes I get questions like, is that too much to have in a special revenue fund for something like this kind of a millage? But what I always tell people is, you have to think about any capital outlay needs that might be on the horizon. You know, if you have to make a contribution towards a fire truck or some type of larger equipment, that's very expensive. And so you have to kind of build that up over time so that you can take that in the years where you need to make those contributions as well. All right, switching gears, we'll talk about your enterprise funds. So here we have the water fund. You can see that revenues have consistently exceeded total expenses, which is what we would hope to see here. Only a slight increase year over year between both of those. Really, they're both kind of trending up about the same this particular year. And then we see a pretty similar story in the sewer fund. Revenues are still exceeding expenses, and that line has remained really close. You're just adding back a very small amount annually to your net position amount. But what we probably care about more in the enterprise funds is our working capital. That kind of tells us what's on hand to be able to pay for operations and any projects that we need to that maybe we're not going to seek bonded debt for. So here you can see in those funds, the water fund, that working capital had been trending up, was basically flat with the prior year, about 3.7 million in working capital for water fund. And then on the sewer side, you'll see that that actually had a pretty decent increase this year. So that's now also at about 3.7 million. The reason for that increase is that to get to working capital, we take all of your current assets, so what we think you're going to liquidate within a year's time, and subtract out your current liabilities. So what is going to be due within a year that you owed at the end of December. And you happen to pay off the 2009 refunding bonds during 2021, so that reduced the amount of debt that you're required to pay in 2022, which means you have more available for working capital. So that's what accounted for that pretty large increase there on that. Okay, and then it wouldn't be an audit if we didn't talk about findings or if there were no findings. And fortunately, for Union Township, there were no material weaknesses and no significant deficiencies identified. So your books are well taken care of. You have great internal controls. Sherry definitely cares whether things are right or not and wants to make sure that things are being recorded correctly. So you're very fortunate to have her in that position. I know she stays up on top of the accounting rules. I see her at conferences. We talk about things as they come up, and so that's just a testament to her really staying on top of that, and then making sure that she's doing the monitoring she needs to do of other departments to make sure that they're also doing things correctly, and so those departments are doing a good job as well. And with that, I would take any questions if you have them.
I have a question. In the fire fund, let me use a question from Mark. In the fire fund, are we starting to put money away? I know we bought a new truck, but are we starting to put money away for another purchase?
We
It won't be 15 years from now, but
but we are. we save money, so to speak, for the annual payment, which is made quarterly,
Yep.
to the city for the services. And then we will be accumulating fund balance from here for the long term for a fire
Purchase another
truck. Yep.
They're cheap, right? Only like 800,000.
Yeah, and in 15 years, it'll be
Yeah.
1.2 million.
We had a large fund balance up until, I think it was 2 years ago, we took delivery of a fire truck that we'd been saving up for in the same manner
Right.
for a long time.
Thank you.
So can you speak to page 4 of your presentation a little bit? So I was kind of surprised by the general fund revenues, seeing that much of an increase in 21.
I know, I'm trying to get back there.
Sorry,
Thank you.
two more.
Yes.
So 2021 increased quite a bit over 20. How much of that is the 6% sales tax, the revenue sharing that we get from that?
Well, what falls in that total revenue sharing category, I think was up 193,000
And I think
in
you said,
total.
trying to
So
remember-
about 200,000, I think is what I said when I was on that pie chart. And then the other large increase is,
local contribution.
yes, that East DDA 200,000
Okay. And that-
contribution.
That helps. I was trying to figure out why, and that was looking at this prior to your presentation, why we were seeing the jump that we're seeing. And I was trying to extrapolate from that because for 2022 in my head, you know, census-wise, we lost roughly 10% of our population. And so I was trying to extrapolate, well, if we had 10% loss in revenue sharing, what's that graph going to look like in 2022? And it's probably not fair to ask you that even.
Right, I can't say what that will look like.
Yeah,
But 2021 revenue sharing was more, I think, than anyone expected it to be, right? Because people thought that some spending would start decreasing, and that is not what happened. Spending, kept trending upwards and staying even with the levels that it had gotten to, and so that meant there was more money in the pool that had to be, passed down to everyone. So that's, why revenue sharing was up, which is a good thing, right, for local
Right.
governments. So 2022, we'll see what happens. It depends on what sales throughout the state kind of look like. And then obviously your census will play into what you get allocated.
It seems like with some of the inflation that we're seeing, just sales tax revenues ought to increase because the demand seems pretty high. People are catching up from 2020 still in some of their purchases. And I'm just hoping, as we look forward, that
Yeah.
that's some of the stuff that we'll see.
Yeah. And they do put out on the state's website, you can get out to what they're estimating, that you'll receive, but some of those estimates were pretty far off.
Anybody else have questions?
I'm just glad to see that our general fund balance is still doing good.
I will make a general comment in that as we get to the end, no weaknesses, no significant deficiencies. I have been through these audits before where that is not the case. So it's nice to see that. And I think some of the new board members, that's all you've seen in the last couple of years, right? So it does go the other way. And so kudos to the staff for keeping things in order.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Before we move on, I see we have a county commissioner here. Are you wanting to speak on behalf of the county commission at all?
Sure, real quick. I know I hate to take up time when you're doing budget stuff, but Trustee Bills is not here, so you sat in our meeting. But one curious thing that we just had a report from the Mid-Michigan Development Regional, And Isabella County was the only county that was expected to get a population increase. We thought that was very strange that we are actually supposed to increase our population. Saginaw, all the other ones in the region were going to be down. So we have a little bit of a younger population than them around us. So anyways, real quick, main thing is of course the jail. What you read in the paper, the bids came in about at least 25% over what we initially counted on. So we're actually going back to some of the drawing board if you can get somebody to start construction. So it will not be done this summer. So we did rent that property out. So at least we get a little bit of income coming in. Unfortunately, it'll only take like 148 years to pay for the property itself. So. But anyways, we're going forward. We'll be doing 3 and 10-year projections on that, and actually we're going to have a meeting next week just on the finance and planning on it. And that's, I guess, not the greatest news, but it's the news I got for you today. I'll take any questions on anything, but I don't want to take up too much of your meeting unless you have any questions.
I want to go back to your first point about the projected
Yes.
increase in residents. Did they give a reason as to why they were projecting that?
Just that our population was a lot younger, and maybe it has to do because, yeah, as you know, Central, the enrollment has been gone 40-some% over the last 10 years. So, but yeah, we were really surprised because everybody else around us, we thought Midland would be, maybe, but they were even down. But Isabella County, he said that was one of the bright spots that this county was going to projected to have an increased population. So we asked them several questions, and they weren't quite sure, but most of it seems to be that our population is a lot younger, so maybe families are going to be increasing. So that was the reason they gave, but it was kind of surprising. So, and with that, I will not take too much more of your meeting. So
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, with that brings us to item 6 on our agenda, public hearings, of which we have none this evening. So that's item 7 on our agenda next. Public comment. Public comments restricted to items on this agenda. It's restricted to 3 minutes. If you choose to approach the public, please state your name and address for the record. And with that, we'll open public comment at 7:23 p.m. Seeing no one coming forward, we'll close public comment at 7:23 p.m. No suggested closed session tonight. That brings us to item 9 on our agenda, reports, boards, and comments. Go to board member reports. Trustee Haug?
Went to a road commission meeting on the 28th of April. They approved 21 gravel road contracts where they have the revenue sharing with townships. We have 4 miles of that are all on Millbrook Road. It goes from like Meridian Road to Mission. Really a short meeting, so they approved the traffic signal that's gonna be going down on Pickard and Bamber Road, or Bradley, Bamber, whatever. So that's basically it.
Thank you very much. Clerk Cody?
Election, was it 2 weeks ago, last Tuesday? We had a total of 687 voters, which 591 of them were absentee.
What was that again? How many?
687 total.
Yeah, and 590 were.
Wow.
591 voted absentee.
Wow.
So we only had like a 8.43% turnout for the school election.
I know, it's amazing. I had a call from the Township clerk. They have like 23.
Deerfield had 7. But out of, I think it was 7, could have been a little bit
You hate to
more or less.
open up polls almost for,
Yeah, I mean, that's out of 8,153 registered voters. We had 687 vote.
thanks for running another
But
election.
everything went great, so a little slow, but went good.
Yay. Trustee Brown?
I have no report today.
Trustee Therian?
Oh, we meet next week?
Awesome. So are you okay if I bring up?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So I was gonna put the spotlight on Trustee Therian tonight, because one of the things that's come up here at our meetings is, I don't know if it was both of your ideas or just Trustee Haug's. Trustee Haug's idea regarding the Trailhead Park on, what is it, Deerfield and Old Mission. And, you know, we haven't, obviously, at this point, taken any steps towards that. But with the planning commission undergoing the Parks and Rec master plan, I felt it would be helpful if Trustee Therian, on behalf, even though we've not taken a position yet, be helpful if Trustee Therian, at least as you're brainstorming the planning commission, looking at survey results, et cetera, that idea gets at least put into the mix so that that can be evaluated with everything else, because I think they may not come up with that on their own. So it'd be nice to include that, and I'm assuming this board doesn't have any issues with that, is that accurate?
I mean, with the board's permission, I'd like to at least mention that, but we hadn't really had any serious discussion about it, so I didn't really want to go on my own and start having a conversation that may have ended up at a dead end. But I've wanted to. Bill's idea is a great idea. It's definitely worth the time to have that discussion. So with the board's permission, I would like to, I have no issue next week, kind of bringing that up as something that we're going to get a little bit deeper into discussion. If that's okay, is that okay to say it like that?
Yeah, I mean, my curiosity more about it is that it's on their radar, so as they're going through the plan process, that it gets evaluated with everything else. And, you know, because if ultimately if the planning commission comes back and recommends that, that means a lot to me, right? But it might not be on their radar if they're not given the idea, at least, as they're discussing the plan.
So I'll put something together and
Okay,
say a few words.
thank you.
If the board could keep in mind that you've had discussion about what to do with this new with this township hall,
Yeah.
and that location could be a spot for that. Now, that's not, that doesn't need to get in the way of what you're talking about. It's a Parks and Rec master plan. But I do want you to be aware of that.
No, they're
That
polling.
over.
That has been, I mean, I guess I was not aware of that, which is not an issue, but that's been kind of a thought of a possible location.
And you-
Any of our township-owned property that's big enough would be a candidate.
That would probably be big enough to house both,
That's what I've thought.
yeah.
Yeah, that was
So
my
the-
thought too.
The
Bill
Parks and
I
Rec,
walked it,
the-
so.
Yeah.
what the planning commission is doing is helping the Board of Trustees develop the Parks and Rec master plan. And that's a planning document. So that discussion of whether the planning commission, ultimately the Board of Trustees, the community, wants more parks and where they should be, that's where that belongs in that document. Just keep in mind that there may be other things that would prevent, as with any planning document, specific plans from being executed. And thank you.
I
Thank
don't
you for
want to
that.
bring that. I'm not going to be the one to bring that to the public.
All right, Treasurer Rice?
Nothing right now. I did my report at the last meeting. We haven't had another one since. So.
Very good. And I have nothing this evening, so that'll take us to our consent agenda.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Support.
Motion by Rice, support by Brown to approve the consent agenda. I believe trustee Bills had the warrants this evening, and trustee Hauk was gracious enough to come in and cover for
And
her.
everything looked okay.
Good. Any questions about anything? Debate? Seeing no one coming forward, all in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Consent agenda passes unanimously. That brings us to our single new business item this evening. I hope you all saw, I think I sent it out this morning, just a memo. Oh, in fact, I printed those off in case you don't have it. I meant to hand these out. Everybody get the email today?
I did.
And I had promised to get these out much earlier than I did, so my apologies.
Thank you, sir.
The board asked a subcommittee to kind of meet and discuss the police service levels, and trustee Thering, Clerk Cody, myself, and our manager, I think it was about an hour we sat, roughly, discussing this. And I talk a lot up here because it's part of my job, but I'd be happy if one of you two would like to speak to this.
Yeah, I mean, my takeaway from our conversation was we had a lot of questions that we just could not answer. I mean, I think all of us would be in favor of doing something, we just don't know what that something would be, or if it's even necessary. Whether it be the sheriff's department, we have 5 entities, so whether it's the sheriff's department, or the CMU police, or Mount Pleasant police, or the state police, or the tribe. So, because of the questions that we have, we need to do a little more research before we start allocating funds towards anything, really know what our need is. That was how I took it. I felt very comfortable with saying, at this point, I feel that we should just do our due diligence and get those answers.
And part of that discussion, correct, if you feel I misinterpret, jump in, 2 of you, is we didn't know what the perception was in the community.
Correct.
Perceived need of increasing the levels. I mean, how is our police service levels going today? How is it? We didn't have that feeling. And so that led us to a brief discussion about a potential survey to our community members. And it has been, we've done 2 surveys in the last decade. I believe it was 2000, a little over a decade now, 2009, 2016, I believe. And it might be a ripe opportunity to do that. And I don't know, it may be too late to incorporate that into the master parks plan, just because of timing. And my understanding, they've done a small survey themselves. But there are a lot of needs that we look at, and we don't always know where our community is at. And so I was very supportive of the idea of, let's ask our residents again, it's maybe time to see where everybody's at, where are their priorities, what are their perceptions of service levels, from everything from police to water and sewer, to our parks, to our roads. Is that accurate?
Yeah. And it goes even farther to say, so if we determine that there is a need, it's the who. Who do we go to next to take care of the needs that we have? It may not be this entity, it might be this one that we need to support.
And those needs might be different. If there is a need to increase service levels, it may be, maybe there's a perceived need for community policing versus, enforcement, right? Maybe there's a need for enforcement, we don't know, based on at least what the residents feel they need.
Yes, sir.
So with that, you kind of heard from us. Lisa, do you want to comment on anything that we didn't capture properly from our meeting?
No, you pretty much summed it up.
Do the trustees have thoughts on this?
Yeah, I have a thought, and we talked about this, I think, before, about what Lori was doing, with the mental officer, the mental, I forget what they call that. officer that they have on site. I don't think it's really an officer, I think it's someone that goes out and helps the officer with, what am I trying to say, the mental stability of the community. And I didn't know if maybe that came up in some of your guys' conversations too, as far as when we're talking about policing, are we talking about a police officer in a uniform? Or what are we policing too? You know, I think maybe a question in that, do we need a police officer, or do we need, what kind of personnel do we need in the community? Whether it be like the city's doing, or I'd like to see how that program's going, actually.
I did talk to the mayor, I'm thinking it's probably about a month now. We had talked about this in one of our previous meetings, and I asked her directly, and she said that they had not begun the task yet.
Gotcha.
And she described the position a little bit more. It is a trained police officer, but they're also trained in mental health.
Oh, perfect.
And so maybe their police officer training is not as strong as a typical officer, but they're skilled in both being a police officer and mental health.
Well, that's even better yet, isn't it?
It's the right question that we didn't have the,
Oh,
great
sure.
question. We don't have the answers to that, so.
Well, I'm with you on getting, doing our due diligence. I definitely think you're going on the right track, for sure.
So what does this board think about the idea of, it's been since 2006 since we've done a community survey regarding all things township, really. Response rates, for those that weren't here, response rates were amazing to the last two surveys. I'm always amazed at how many of our residents, businesses reply to the request for information from us. I think we learn a lot about where people are at and what their needs are.
Lots changed since the last time we did it. A tremendous amount has changed since the last time.
And I'll be honest, I haven't talked to our manager at any length. I think it came up in a brief conversation once. I don't know what kind of workload that puts on staff. But I would love the information. I think it would be helpful to us as trustees,
Well, we have a.
especially when it comes to ARPA money too, right?
Right. Well, we have a previous survey that maybe we could review and see what's relevant. Maybe add something new based on the times of today.
I think it probably is time to do another, I'll call it full-blown community survey. I do occasionally look at the one from 2016, and I think we've been responsive to those needs over the last few years. But it would be time to update that. And I could imagine that we would begin maybe some of that planning work. The last time it was done by one of the departments or an affiliate of CMU anyways. And so begin to start reaching out to that organization, and you'd probably expect to see that as a part of the 2023 budget request.
Sounds good.
Is there any resistance to this?
No?
No, not at all.
And, manager mentioned the 2016 one, and as we were talking about police service levels, I go to that often too, that survey results. And that was when I looked in there was not a perceived need. Our police services, both our state and sheriff, were rated really pretty high, amazingly high. And maybe that's changed. I mean, it absolutely could have. Obviously, things in this world has changed a lot in the last 6 years. So it'd be nice to see that.
That survey is still on our website.
I think you distributed that to all the board too.
I did.
so-
You'd receive a physical copy as well.
Maybe it'll give you a lot of answers. At least a direction what way to go.
Right. And with the ARPA money, that's a big deal, once in a lifetime, once in at least several generation kind of thing. It'd be nice to spend it where we and our township as a whole thinks it should go? What are our priorities? Maybe it's all roads. I don't know the answer.
The kids,
Kids? You're right.
the younger generation,
yeah.
they're the ones that are gonna say.
Well, we're a young county. I heard that somewhere
Yes,
this evening.
we have to support this young county and this young township.
All right, anything else, board? All right. If not, then seeing no other comments, that'll move us to item 12, extended public comment. Extended public comment is restricted to 5 minutes regarding any issue. Again, if you choose to come forward and address the public, please state your name and address for the record. And with that, we'll open up extended public comment at 7:41 PM.
Yes, Frank Engler, 1798 West River Road. I'm really trying to keep my mouth shut here, but you guys brought up the sheriff's office. I'm on the criminal justice. And probably for the last 2 years, it's been a struggle. We've raised the price of the wages and reorganized, so that office is probably only 4 months have had full staff and everything. It was understaffed probably during most of the COVID restrictions, so when you do your survey, hopefully, I know we're the same way with the Parks Department. They've been severely underfunded, and a lot, just about every department we've had, they've been underfunded. So as of probably 3 or 4 months, they've been fully staffed, and everything's been working fairly well. But just kind of take that into consideration. That I mean, the sheriff was almost sitting at the colleges kidnapping them, trying to get them there. There was so much competition; it was very hard, to get them. But we had finally. They're fully staffed now, and we did that. We raised a lot of their salaries, get them into wages, and then we actually bumped a few people up because he needed somebody. We had a lot of retirement, so tried to get more qualified people into that position. So, anyways, that's all I had to say.
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate your
you.
comments. Extended public comment is still open, but seeing no one coming forward, thank you. We'll close extended public comment at 7:42 PM. And with that, that brings us to item 13 on our agenda, manager's comments. Mr. Stuhldreher, you have the floor.
Thank you, and I have nothing tonight. Thank you.
Wow. Final board member comment. Let's see, I started with trustee Haug for board reports, so trustee Brown.
Just one thing. Thank you, Sherry Teal, so much. We really appreciate your work. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That's it, that's all I have.
Trustee Therian.
Thank you, Sherry. Appreciate all your time and effort.
Treasurer Rice.
I get to tell her this all the time, but thanks, Sherry. And thank you for everyone that, helps out with the audit and that, does what they need to, that do what they need to do so that Sherry's life is a little easier when it comes to the audit. Not that it's easy in one bit, but it's appreciated. I'm sure.
Clerk Cody.
Thank you, Sherry. Okay, so my comment earlier, I said Deerfield Township, it was Wise Township, but you don't really have to make that correction. I just wanted everybody to know that I said the wrong township.
Thanks, Sherry. I didn't have any comments until, I do have one. I just want to let the public know, we haven't had any discussions on building a new township hall yet. And I know it was maybe mentioned that if we build a park out on the south side of town, the corner of Deerfield and Mission, that could be a spot, but we haven't talked about that, so. Because I personally don't think it'll go over very good in this township. I mean, we're about right in the center of the township. We have a lot of elderly people in this township. And They're not gonna wanna try to travel on that side of town to vote, to get building permits, to pay their taxes. We've got plenty of land right around this township hall we could build on. I mean, we do need a new township hall, people. So, I know it's in the future, but anyways, that's the only comment I had.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll just add that, you're right, we've not formalized any of that, but we've asked that our manager make sure that we're looking at long-term capital
Right,
expenditures and that
yes,
we're
I appreciate
preparing for the future. And whether that means adding to this building or restoring this.
Yes!
Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
For you to sign.